Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. This is a talk video, and the next Conquest character, Luthen, Rael, is on the way. Before we go through our normal process here, looking at the developer insights, breaking down and analyzing the kit, looking at the gear requirements, and speculating a little bit on what could be happening with the squad, I do want to say a few things about the last update, about the new accounts in the early game, because they have received some massive and needed changes. The early game took way too long, and I think it alienated a lot of potential players, and I think with these changes what we are going to end up seeing is a little bit better player retention from people giving the game a try, and instead of quitting too early, they'll get to the meat of the game with decent rosters and hopefully stick with it and keep the health of the game ongoing. And because of all of that, I am going to have to start another new account series because I need to have an informed opinion on all of these changes. It's something I've been considering for a while because we've also seen just with the crate raids how gear has completely changed, and it's been a couple years, so the existing videos are fairly dated, and there's just a lot of new account information I've been wanting to cover for a while. So this is the perfect opportunity to do it, but I'm going to probably give it a week or two because there's just going to be so many ongoing players who are going to create second accounts to give this a try that the shards are going to get flooded. I think I want to give that a chance to filter out a little bit before I create an account and hopefully get into some more favorable shards, but also more representative shards, because these shards are going to be flooded with the most active of players, and hopefully the shard that I get into will be more reflective of what future players are going to see when they start showing up in a month, 2 months, a year, whatever. Luthen joins the holotables as a light side rebel and rebel fighter support character. Now, I'm a little shocked we're getting Luthen right now. I didn't think we'd get any Andor content until we were closer to Season 2's release, especially when there's plenty of older content to tap into with Kenobi, Mando, Bad Batch. But I guess it's really Lucasfilm who's delayed, because Andor was supposed to come out around August, I think originally, and instead got delayed until sometime in 2025. So CG may be meeting the original schedule like they did with Cal Kestis, because Jedi Survivor got delayed and the Cal Kestis content came out a little bit earlier. Now, as we break down this information, we take a look at the attributes and the tips. That's what I think is usually the most interesting here. And what we see is his key attributes offer a summoned rebel commander that's going to be a little bit more persistent, and he's also going to get automatically promoted to that commander level with all those corresponding stats and the extra special ability, and that's going to boost Mon Mothma. In addition, he's going to work under Saw Gerrera, and he's going to be capable on offense and defense depending on composition and strategy. And I do think defensively I'm fairly skeptical on, even with Mon Mothma, just because I think it might require a little bit more control to get the full benefit. Not necessarily, but I think it's going to be stronger on offense regardless, would be my bet, although functional on defense. With the strategy tips portion, Saw is considered the offensive leader, and under Saw the rebel trooper will get a new effect, expendable asset, and that is going to benefit the squad through the trooper being defeated and creating a cooldown reset. And in Grand Arena, Luthen is going to let rebel fighters ignore taunt, and he's going to be a triple Ami Grand Arena character. And I'll say up front before we get into it, but I'll repeat this throughout, I think this is the first step to larger moves within this squad. I don't think we have everything we need here, and so I'd be a little careful to put on any Omicrons until we see if there's going to be additional marquee releases that are going to synergize with this kit. This feels incomplete to me. The basic ability, Tools of My Enemy, is an Omicron ability, and with this we do special damage to the target and inflict healing immunity. Now that's a powerful debuff that's usually with a special, so this should make healing immunity pretty persistent and annoying, particularly with Mon Mothma, where it can be more easily spread since he's always assisting. The Axis bonus, during Luthen's turn, inflict buff immunity onto the target, which can't be dispelled. And if the rebel commander is active, inflict fear on the target. Now that's some strong control. A locked buff immunity and fear, as long as you're not relying on AoEs. I find fear to be preferable to the stun for me, since it can't be cleansed like the stun can. The Curator bonus, dispel all buffs on the target. During Luthen's turn, if the allied rebel commander is active, call to assist. Now, a good buff dispel was missing from Mon Mothma, so it's easy to see how this is going to elevate that squad. Gets out from behind a taunt quickly, so the attacks can be more focused onto where they will do the most damage and where you can eliminate somebody a little bit more quickly. With that portion, there's also why I wonder if this is going to be better on offense, where you can control the targets, because I don't trust the AI to know who to target, but it might be negligible. The Omicron Grand Arena. During Luthen's turn, he gains 25 speed. This is to a max of 100 until the end of the encounter, and target enemy has their defense reduced by 30% until the next time Luthen uses his basic or until defeat. Now this depends a little bit on base speed, and the good news here is Luthen has a pretty high base speed. At 198, he's tied for third of the non-GL characters. Everybody here is a GL, then you only have a few that are slightly faster than him. And what this probably means is we're going to want to build on this strength and get him modded for speed, make him fast as possible, so that stacking speed is going to happen quickly, but it also means that defense reduction will probably need to be reapplied each time, so stay focused on who Luthen attacks and be aware of who has that reduced damage for everyone else to attack, because you're going to be moving it around every time Luthen uses basic. This is definitely a candidate to be considered for one of the Omicrons to be applied, but I don't think it is a day one Ami. I just want to hold back and wait. It could be a day one Ami, but I would be fine waiting on this until we see what happens with this squad. The first special, what do I sacrifice? A cooldown of 3 and an Omicron ability. If the allied leader is rebel and not a GL, summon a rebel trooper and promote them to commander. If the rebel commander is already present, cleanse debuffs on them and they gain a bonus turn. Now this condition suggests to me to hold off on using this ability. You want it around as insurance to get the rebel commander back on the field. We will explore this point further when we discuss the unique. But the debuff cleanse, that's really only going to be desirable under Mon Mothma. With Saw Lead, you'll likely benefit from the debuffs on the rebel commander, since it might mean the commander goes down a little bit more quickly. The target rebel fighter or Mon Mothma ally gains 30% offense stacking and is immune to turn meter reduction until the end of the next turn. Now this portion here in the question and answers that CG put out on Wednesday said that that description was bugged. They didn't exactly specify what they meant by it, but I think they just mean it's going to say rebel fighter ally and eliminate the Mon Mothma portion, but we'll see how they tweak it. Axis bonus, if rebel commander is present, they gain 50% offense stacking. It's fine. Curator bonus, if rebel commander is present, they recover 50% health and protection. Target rebel ally gains frenzy. Both of these are nice to have. I don't expect to be making too many decisions in a battle based on them, particularly because I think the offense on the Saw squad needs some work, and this feels to me intended for a future character who will hopefully be 2 tubes and can benefit from getting that extra offense stacking. Now the Omicron portion, Grand Arena Ami, if rebel commander is present, all allies gain crit damage up for 2 turns. Mon Mothma and all other rebel fighter allies gain 30% offense stacking and are immune to turn meter reduction until the end of the next turn, and target rebel fighter ally ignores taunt. Now this is an Omicron I'm going to be skipping until I see it in action. If the offense stacking was to the end of the encounter, maybe I'd feel differently, and it's certainly going to help a Mon Mothma squad that's going to benefit from an offensive boost, but this screams to me either wait for a future character or see the best use cases from other people first. This just doesn't seem strong enough based on the characters that we have right now and how I think they're going to function day one. The second special, well, a Sunless Space, cooldown of 3 with a Zeta. Mon Mothma and all Rebel fighter allies gain speed up and bonus protection for 2 turns. Bonus protection is always welcome and a nuisance. Axis bonus, all Rebel fighter allies cleanse. For each debuffed cleanse, they gain 10% turn meter, so it is going to be beneficial to wait until there are debuffs on the field. And if the allied Rebel commander is active, inflict marked on them for 2 turns. Now this is what this ability is really about. A cleanse on a squad comp that could benefit from a second cleanse if you assume Chirrut is going to be part of this squad, and inflicting marked onto the commander ensures the unique functions as intended. And based on what we know from the special, first special, second special, and what we'll get to with the unique, this tells me we're going to want to use basic turn 1. We're going to inflict that healing immunity, and if we apply that Ami, we're going to get that speed stacking and some buff immunity if we're under Saw. Because with this second special, we're going to want to wait until marked is no longer on the Rebel commander to keep marked on the Rebel commander, because with the unique, he's starting with marked. With the curator bonus, I kind of keeping a little short shrift of this one, rally Mon Mothma and all Rebel fighter allies, which is whatever. It adds a second rally so that we see those benefits more regularly, but it isn't particularly powerful. Actually, technically it adds a third rally because the Rebel commander also has a rally. And as a reminder to what rally does, you're going to get role-based benefits. Tanks are going to taunt, attackers will assist, and healers and support characters are going to recover health and protection. So now that we have 3 characters granting rally, we will see those effects be a little bit more persistent on a Mon Mothma squad. The unique ability Dreams with Ghost, this is an Omicron ability. Mon Mothma Rebel fighter allies gain 20 speed. Squad gets sped up, that's going to help turn meter trains with Mon Mothma. Makes POW and Scout probably more important, but it does raise questions about who gets knocked out from the squad. Cara Dune could go to Sana, but her synergy is really strong and nice with Kyle Katarn, so I prefer Cara with Mon Mothma despite what she can do elsewhere. So I think there's going to be some fine-tuning here to figure out who we'd prefer to knock out with Scout or POW. The doubling up of the turn meter train those 2 characters create may become redundant with some of these other effects that are ongoing. At each encounter start, if the allied leader is Rebel and not a GL, summon a Rebel trooper and promote them to a Rebel commander. So that means the third ability, we'll see this at the end, of the Rebel trooper, that is automatically going to be present at the start of the battle instead of having to promote them throughout. So this is also the condition why I think the first special can be delayed. While the Rebel commander is active, Luthen is immune to ability block, cooldown increase, and taunt effects, and he can't be targeted or reduced below 100% health. That means even the AoEs aren't going to be benefiting other than taking out some protection. So this adds a version of Mon Mothma mechanics. It's going to make him super annoying, make him difficult to eliminate, and this is also why I think it's critical to hold off on the first special, because while the commander is active, Luthen is going to be a pain to manage. Axis. Whenever a Rebel trooper is summoned, they're going to gain the expendable asset effect and are inflicted with an undispellable marked. Whenever a Rebel trooper is defeated, all attacker allies reset cooldown. So this is another data point towards another future character. Saul, Luthen, Baze, Biggs, they are all not attackers. Only Chirrut and Wedge would benefit here, and I cared little for the cooldowns on those characters, especially when Wedge's cooldown reduces quickly and Chirrut's special is just a heal. So we're not getting too much from an attacker ability. So this screams future synergy, which is why I also advise caution here in terms of investment. Hopefully we gain some clarity before Luthen is playable. We do have 3 months. CG could release somebody else, but we don't know the progression of that nesting doll strategy that CG likes to employ. With Curator, whenever a Rebel trooper begins its turn, Luthen and Mon Mothma gain 20% turn meter. So more turn meter train mechanics, making that more desirable and forcing a smaller pool of counters. It might mean that Tuskens or Night Sisters may need to be held back to counter this squad in a dedicated faction, or Malik or somebody who is going to shut down that turn meter train. With expendable asset, can't gain stealth, and can always be targeted by enemies. Lose lose 70% max health and gain 70% offense. And whenever the Rebel Trooper uses its basic, inflict defense down on the target that's unevadable, unresistible. And whenever the Rebel Trooper uses a special ability, they are inflicted with marked and gain retribution, both undispellable. This effect is going to make them more of a problem offensively. They're going to be forcing attacks onto themselves with marked. They can reapply marked onto themselves, and they're going to counter with retribution when they do that. They're going to inflict defense down with all that extra offense, which is going to do a bunch of damage onto the opponent. But I'd like to see more benefit from expendable asset, and I suspect we will see it. Although it's good, it does seem like its biggest benefit is just protecting Luthen by the commander being present and by him forcing attacks onto himself. But if we do see a future attacker, then the cooldown reset matters a whole lot more. That mechanic of the asset dying off, triggering that cooldown, could become very beneficial and important, and right now I don't think it's there. With the Omicron Grand Arena Ami there, and if there are no Rebel GLs, Mon Mothma and Rebel Fighter allies gain 30% max health, mastery, and 20 speed. They're going to gain bonus protection 50% for one turn. The first time the Rebel commander is defeated each battle, summon a Rebel trooper and promote them to commander. So this is the first clear-cut Ami on the character. I'd feel safe putting this one on day one, even without additional characters or without testing. And it should have utility regardless of squad and composition. Because one of the major things it's doing is making sure you don't have to use that first special from Luthen to bring back the commander. It's just going to come back on his own on top of all those the stat benefits that we're seeing here. The second unique Rebel Trooper, this I believe is identical with Mon Mothma, but the difference here is all of the abilities from the promotion will be present immediately at the start of the battle and every time the Rebel Trooper reappears. But what we really need to emphasize here is the synergy with the first unique on Luthen, because the Rebel Trooper is a light side Rebel fighter attacker. And because he's an attacker, that means every time he's using his special, he's also resetting cooldowns on his own special, which should mean he could potentially be spamming that ability every time he takes the turn, because what he will be doing is rallying all Rebel fighters. So there's going to be a mass assist every time the trooper takes his turn. He's going to inflict marked on himself and call everyone to assist, and that'll force attacks on him and create the synergy of the expendable asset taking himself out, then reappearing, resetting cooldowns on himself, calling mass assists. So you can see the potential here. But the reason why I still think we need to wait on another attacker is we don't know how quickly we're going to be able to take out the trooper. If we're taking out the trooper faster than he can utilize some of those abilities, then it doesn't really matter. We got to see if we can actually utilize that mass assist on the same level. Now, the other things here, the basic ability is going to inflict daze, and the unique Mon Mothma and Rebel Fighter allies are going to have additional crit damage and tenacity, 45% crit damage, 90% tenacity. And he has his own unique that is summoned, where he will scale stats based on the summoner's stats, and that is because like Luthen or Mon Mothma, they do have a lot of stat boost that will affect how that Rebel Trooper behaves. And part of the reason I like to wait a little bit on doing these videos when I can is because we get to take a look at the gear. And Luthen, he's not that bad of a character, especially for a Conquest character. Gear level 7 I always like to look at for the hollow projectors or Carbantes. You can see he is going to be a little bit of a Carbante heavy character, but that gear piece is not the problem that it used to be. You can see 2 stun guns and 2 more Carbantes, so 200 Carbantes at gear 8. Like, that is a lot of carbs. Gear 9, we see the first of the Chirotech sets, an additional couple sets of stun guns, but again, this is not the problem that it used to be. Just prepare in advance. Know that you are going to need a lot of carbs and stun guns. Gear level 10, another set of Kairos, and that's it to gear 11. So it's 2 sets of Kairos, which is a little below average. Most characters are about 3, but it's usually 2 to 3, so he is on the lower end. He's just carb and stun gun heavy up to that gear 11 mode, and I do think he's probably going to be viable at gear 11, because if you can't take him out, those types of characters usually do pretty well. Like Mon Mothma was completely viable at gear level 11. It's just because she's required for JML, everybody took her to relics. But she was perfectly fine even at low stars. At gear 11, we see another Chirotech to take her to relics, but the rest of the gear is no problem. It's the relic finishers, though, the gear 12 plus pieces. This is a little bit more annoying, but it's not terrible. We see 2 Mark 12 data pads, so there's going to be a good amount of data pads. The med packs, there's only one Nubian scanner, and then for the finisher, we've got the fusion furnaces with the Chiro prods. So that is a little bit more on the annoying end for the finisher, but overall, especially when we have things like the tactical data, this is a pretty easy character up to relics and just a slightly more annoying character to relic. Now, before we wrap up, I do want to talk about the characters in these squads a little bit, just to think about what could be happening and who could be joining in the future. For the Mon Mothma squad, even though I do like Cara Dune on this squad, it is a redundant functionality, because the potency synergy with Kyle Katarn is really just about keeping her reviving and having the taunt up, but in a way, that is what Luthen will be doing with the Rebel Commander. So in this case, Kara's the one out, Kyle Katarn is going to be the damage dealer, and Pow and Hoth Rebel Scout are both too important for the turn meter gain that they create. With Pow, as a reminder, and partly because I still see people with other comps, you got Sakala here, this is 40% turn meter whenever he uses this ability, and also for Pipada here, he's reducing his own cooldowns whenever a Rebel ally uses a basic attack, which means he can use Sakala all the time and keep generating those huge turn meter gains. Similarly with Hoth Rebel Scout on his basic, he's generating 25% turn meter for all allies. That's too valuable to lose because he's using his basic all the time. These characters, they gotta be there. So Luthen becomes the Cara Dune replacement and is replacing some of that functionality by having the taunt move over to the Rebel Commander, who is then doing attacks there and Luthen can't be targeted. And the Commander retains some of the revive aspects that Cara Dune is doing with her potency up. With the Saw Gerrera squad, we have a few things to address here. One, you have 2 sets of combos who have a lot of synergy. You have the Chase combo, the Wigs combo. Both are very strong, but they also have synergy with each other, because one of the things going on here is how Chirrut's unique works with heal over time. That's also going to be triggered whenever there's critical hits, and the Wigs combo gets a lot of critical hits because Biggs offers a big crit chance increase if Wedge is present, and then Wedge will be helping to gain those critical hits, which is going to be triggering heal over times from Chirrut, which are going to synergize with Saw Gerrera, and as those things expire, it's going to be reducing cooldown. So there's a lot of synergy there that's always existed here that's pretty interesting. But we got to eliminate one of the characters, and really if we're eliminating one, we're probably eliminating 2. But because heal over times are from Chirrut, he is irreplaceable, which means we're taking out the Wigs combo. Now we could keep one of them potentially, like Biggs probably, when we're adding Luthen. Now what's probably going to happen is we'll have future characters, but the thing that I want to emphasize is Bodhi, because Bodhi has some interesting functionality that is not too desirable when we have those 2 combos together. But if we're breaking up one of those combos, Bodhi can start contributing because he has this ability here, Spotter, which gives offense up, and then you have this ability here which grants extra defense when characters have offense up. And because of the heal over time synergy reducing cooldowns, it means this ability can be used a little bit more frequently, which is going to be a little bit more beneficial than it would be otherwise because of that cooldown of 4. And that cooldown reduction I'm talking about, this is from Saw Gerrera's lead, where he is reducing cooldowns on support or healer characters. But this Bodhi slot is also probably going to be a placeholder for a future character, or alternatively, we might see a situation where this Saw team actually stays, or the original one with Biggs and Wedge, where we have the Biggs Wedge combo remain and we get a different Saw. Because one thing I've always been wanting to see is Old Man Saw, because this version in the game right now is the Fallen Order Saw Gerrera, who's a little bit younger, and this awesome Forrest Whitaker version is one I've been holding out hope for when Andor Season 2 comes out, as potentially a legendary or conquest character. But we could also see Benthic Two Tubes, who's just one of the coolest looking characters, and I desperately want in the game, and he would make sense as the attacker, and that attacker getting those cooldown reductions and potentially doing some really big damage. And then, of course, we could see like a legendary Cassian or a conquest level Cassian that is related more to the show and not Rogue One, because the current Cassian in game is a support character, and we could get a newer version who is an attacker who then would have that synergy with Luthen. And we could also see all of them. You could see a new Old Man Saw with a Cassian, with Luthen, with Benthic, plus an additional character in the future. That all could be a promising future. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is this is not the ideal situation, but there's enough synergy where we could be looking at Luthen with CLS or Akbar, even though they are not Rebel fighter characters. We can't build a full team with Rebel fighter characters, because what Luthen would then be doing for like a CLS squad, for instance, is by adding just that marked, because that will still be active. You're losing some synergy by not having Rebel fighters, like you're not getting a massive rally with all these other characters, but you are in effect creating a taunt, creating some recovery, creating some extra buffs and other synergy that could be desirable. And same deal with Akbar, but with Akbar it's a little bit easier to add some additional Rebel fighters. Like here we've got Han, but you can be utilizing Scarif Rebel Pathfinder in this combo, who would, with all those assists, would be getting that taunt up that gets persistent and annoying. Now, I very much doubt we are in an Andor phase of the game. This just feels like a one-off. But I would be pretty happy if we get some Andor content. Like, I've been always wanting to just have Imperial officers get... It's been too long since I watched the show, I don't even remember the names of the characters right now. If we could be getting Daedra or Cyril, I had to look it up. There's a ton of different content we could be getting from Andor that I would be pretty excited for, even though there's a lot of other things I'd like to be seeing. As long as we're getting new content, I'm happy. I will say a couple words on Acolyte, since that is new and out. I only watched the first episode so far, and I thought it was pretty great. There's things you can nitpick, but overall, it did what I wanted the show to do, which was expand Star Wars, not swim too much in references to the Skywalker saga and stuff we've already seen, but make Star Wars a bigger place, and it's accomplishing that. And even though I think there's a couple things that can be critiqued, overall, I'm happy. I just hope it continues down this path. So thank you for watching. Be excellent to each other, everybody. This still plays Galaxy of Heroes.